Tonight, Alberta votes, the finish line of a high-stakes campaign. Results after a tight race.
And someone that we can rely on, trust what they say.
I'm really happy with what I picked.
A provincial election with national consequences. The widening threat of raging wildfires burning in Nova Scotia.
The fire's too fast. You think it's not, but the next thing you know, you look up, it's right there.
The damage and the danger.
It's dry and there's heat and we got a good wind going right now.
And a new push to protect referees.
It doesn't bode very well as a statement to our society that we have to do this.
Sporting body cameras to deter and document abusive behavior.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina, reporting tonight from Calgary.
This city was a key battleground in a pivotal election. Good evening, everyone. People in Alberta were given two very different visions for the province, and now their choice is clear. The United Conservative Party has won a majority government, with voters choosing to keep Danielle Smith as premier. And Smith delivered this message tonight after that victory was declared.
This was the very definition of a hard-fought election. We faced the most expensive, fierce, and coordinated opposition and third-party political campaigns in provincial history.
Let's go right now to UCP headquarters and CTV senior political correspondent Glenn McGregor, where Danielle Smith just wrapped up her victory speech. And a couple of things stood out for me, Glenn. First was that she promised to unify the province, even those who did not vote for her. And secondly, issuing a very strong warning right off the bat to Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, she obviously has some potential conflicts looming ahead with the Prime Minister. She mentioned a plan that she says the federal government is planning to make it harder to use coal-fired electricity, and she says that's going to set back Alberta. And she talked about how cold the winters are in Alberta and how it's going to particularly affect people here. Of course, we also know she's headed for a conflict with the federal government over gun control and the plan to start buying back certain kinds of firearms that she is opposed to. On the point about division, though, and that may be a boilerplate line we hear in a lot of political victory speeches, the need to heal, the need to come together. In her case, Omar, it's particularly poignant because despite its name, the United Conservative Party is not all that divided. There are divisions within it, and the broader conservative movement in Alberta is also divided. We saw several prominent past progressive conservatives come out and support the NDP or say they weren't voting for Danielle Smith's UCP at all. That's something, Omar, that she's going to have to deal with as she resumes her role as premier.
She won the popular vote pretty decisively there. As she moves on and settles into her new mandate, Glenn, how will she lead? Is it an extension of the same, or are there some lessons that she has learned from the past that she will now take into consideration as she moves forward?
I think she became a different politician by the end of the campaign than she was at the start. She was more disciplined. Her campaign team was very organized. They kept her on the straight and narrow. They had some eruptions, sure, some problems with candidates saying things that were offensive that she had to deal with and respond to. And she also had to deal with her own past comments, things she'd said on, for example, on her radio show. By the end of it, though, she was focused on her message. And the real key was the party's ability to defend Calgary, building a blue wall around the Calgary suburbs to keep the NDP from reclaiming those Calgary seats that they needed to win to get back into power. And so it was not just the leader, also the organizational team behind her that returned Danielle Smith to the Premier's office, Omar.
All right, CTV senior political correspondent Glenn McGregor, where you can hear there's still a lot of excitement and jubilation. Glenn, thanks so much. Alberta NDP leader Rachel Notley addressed her supporters tonight as well.
My friends, let me be clear. Now is not the time to let up. Now is the time to step up. Now is the time for us to do the work that has been asked of us. It is my honor to serve as your leader, and it is my privilege to continue to serve as leader of the official opposition.
CTV's Alberta Bureau Chief Bill Fortier at NDP headquarters in Edmonton. And Bill, the NDP did make gains tonight, but obviously not the result that Rachel Notley wanted.
That's right, Omar. Definitely a muted celebration in this room tonight. There is clearly disappointment, a lot of sad hugs that we're seeing here. As you heard, Rachel Notley has said she will stay on as the opposition leader, but she was visibly upset in her concession speech. She told the crowd that the NDP ran a strong, principled campaign. This party came into tonight with sort of a quiet confidence. They did believe they had a path to 44 seats and a victory. They believed that they could form government at the end of tonight. They ran their campaign heavily on healthcare with a promise to attract more doctors and nurses, thousands of healthcare workers, promising $400 million to do that. But maybe a couple of missteps in their campaign. Some would say the plan to raise the corporate tax from 8% to 11%. That drew heavy fire from business groups like Chambers of Commerce, who publicly called them out for that. And also a big part of the campaign really focused on a tax on Danielle Smith and the UCP. A lot of people saw that as sort of a little bit negative. So, who knows how that might have affected the vote tonight. Of course, it is still a big win for this party. They went from 23 seats in the legislature at dissolution up to somewhere in the 30s. This is a big gain. They made big gains in Calgary, where they were hoping to. So, while not the win that they were looking for, Rachel Notley did say that she has mixed emotions about what happened here tonight. And as mentioned, she will, despite 2 straight provincial election losses, she will continue to serve as the opposition leader here in Alberta. Omar.
All right, Bill Fortier, thank you. This is, of course, also a race with major ramifications in Ottawa. With more on what we are seeing tonight, I'm joined by CTV's chief political correspondent, Vassy Kapelos, and I want to get to that in just a moment. But the polls closed about 3 hours ago, and people have been wondering all through tonight, what took so long to make this declaration?
Yeah, we don't really have an answer to that question yet. From elections, Alberta, certainly the results were really slow to come in, but now they're in, and wow, this is one of the biggest political comebacks I have ever witnessed in my time covering politics. This is something that I think no political pundit 6 months ago would have predicted. We're looking right now at the Conservative headquarters, the UCP headquarters here in Calgary, not too far from where we are. Everyone's really excited. It is, I have to say, what they expected. You heard Bill talk a little bit about how the NDP introduced a hike to the corporate tax rate. The UCP people I've been speaking to today in that room said that's when they started to see things shift. They saw the momentum solidify with the debate and the Premier Danielle Smith's performance there, and they carried it through until today. It is a close election, as Bill said, by Alberta standards, but it's not that close, really. The NDP looks like they've been able to gain quite a bit of ground, but the UCP has won a majority, and it looks like to be a fairly sizable majority. This is a big deal for them. It's a big deal for Danielle Smith. When she lost Premier in 2012, a decade ago, I am not sure a single person in this province would have predicted we'd be here today.
The relationship between Danielle Smith and Justin Trudeau fractious at the best of times. What does it mean going forward for that Alberta-Ottawa relationship?
Oh my goodness. We are in for quite a time, I think, politically. Look, they don't hate being each other's political foes. It's politically advantageous to both of them. Where it becomes an issue for the Prime Minister is from a policy perspective, from a legislative perspective, as they try to navigate more substantial action to mitigate climate change. That involves the number one emitter in this country, the oil patch, right? And that is something that Danielle Smith is going to guard very heavily against, and it works politically for her. It has worked clearly in this campaign where she utilized it quite frequently. And so I think from a policy perspective, they're going to be fighting. From a political perspective, great news for both of them.
All right, Vassy Kapelos, thank you so much for your perspective tonight. And even though we know that the UCP has a majority government, we still don't know the size of that majority government just yet. The results are still coming in. They're streaming in real time on our website. Just go to ctvnews.ca. Well, as we mentioned, it took a very long time, but every vote does count in Alberta. But in Nova Scotia tonight, it's every second that counts. A wildfire is raging dangerously close to Halifax.
Whoa, I need to go.
This is the drive to survive in the province where nearly 17,000 have been forced to flee, the intense flames chewing up the landscape. And virtually no province is spared. There are 206 active fires across the country. And to date, more than 2.4 million hectares scorched, substantially higher than average. And remember, it's still early in the season. But that risky late-night escape from a Halifax subdivision is where our fire coverage begins. CTV's Atlantic Bureau Chief Creason Ajkate reports.
When I left, it was just smoke and sparks flying everywhere.
Lindley Gray is one of more than 14,000 people who were forced to flee their home when a fire broke out in the Halifax suburb of Upper Tantallon Sunday afternoon.
Go.
The fire has now grown to more than 788 hectares. Many had little to no time to leave and only grabbed what they could.
My guts is just churning, just wondering if I've got a house left.
100 firefighters fought the blaze throughout the night, with that number more than doubling come daybreak. While there are no reports of people unaccounted for, at least 200 homes have been damaged or lost, with many still unsure if their homes were spared.
These types of efforts, they take a lot of time. So the last thing we want to do is have folks go back before the area is truly safe to do so.
Lisa Parsons was one of the first families evacuated. Despite RCMP turning her away, she made the dangerous decision to go back and save numerous pets from an animal daycare.
It wasn't until we went to get another set of animals that we then looked and we went, no, we need to leave. We need to leave. So we had, again, cars piled with 8 dogs, 8 cats.
Today, Nova Scotia's premier offered a $500 one-time payment to all evacuees. It's expected they won't be able to return home for several days.
Every resource at our collective disposal is being deployed to fight these fires.
Canada's emergency preparedness minister said Ottawa will be there for people in need.
Canada and our provincial and territorial partners will be there in support of those individuals who have lost their homes.
Officials said the fire did not grow today, which allowed crews to focus on protecting structures. But they will be busy again working throughout the night, and RCMP are asking the public to stay away from the area. Omar.
All right, Creason Ajkate, just west of Halifax. Creason, thank you. And a couple hundred kilometers southwest of where Creason is standing, there's another state of emergency. The province's largest wildfire in Shelburne County has already burned 6,000 hectares. CTV's John Venevalley-Rao on the impact of the scorched earth.
Along Nova Scotia's south shore, an ominous sight as smoke continued to rise from a fire that's been growing, now bigger than the one in Halifax, and that prompted the evacuation of 1,500 people.
The fire's too fast. You think it's not, but the next thing you know, you look up, it's right there. I'm hoping the house is still going to be there, but it didn't look good when I left.
A major highway is closed, while the water bomber from Newfoundland has been helping out, with new fires constantly being sparked.
I don't think you could map anything that would be any worse today than it is. It's dry and there's heat and we got a good wind going right now, so I expect the whole day to be like this with a little flare up here and there.
Back in Halifax, Glenn Taylor is among the evacuees who now knows his home was destroyed, with video posted online showing the damage on his street.
It's heartbreaking. It really is. Mind you, we've had a lot of friends call us. Luckily, we have a place to stay now.
So many displaced after scrambling to get out, told they may not be allowed back home for at least another few days, assuming crews get a handle on the flames.
Very nerve-wracking. I slept in my truck last night because I've been trying to get to my house to get my dogs out, and I haven't been able to get there yet.
Some are now staying in hotels, and a local sports facility has been turned into an evacuation shelter.
Anyone that doesn't have a place to stay is welcome to come. They'll be registered, provided with a cot, a blanket, and pillows.
It's going to happen again, I'm afraid.
Bernie Tronvy grew up in the Halifax area and can't recall a more damaging fire.
I just hope the old house is still standing over there, but I got a big garage and a big house. I don't know, but hey, it's out of my control, isn't it?
Here in Halifax, a few dozen people have been making use of this sports facility now as shelter, with many choosing to stay with friends and family as they anxiously wait to see what happens next. Omar.
An unnerving ordeal for those evacuees. All right, John, thank you. Coming up after the break.
We are going to be asking for Mr. Johnson to step aside as special rapporteur.
New calls to drop the point person on the foreign interference file. Plus, stories of survival after an apartment building partially collapses. There is another lawsuit to tell you about related to the intelligence leaks on foreign interference. Former Ontario Cabinet Minister Michael Chan is suing CSIS, claiming he is, quote, humiliated by the allegations, which he denies. And today, the NDP joined the chorus of condemnation against the man appointed to examine the issue. CTV's Judy Trin explains.
I have an opening and then...
The party propping up the government will no longer support the Prime Minister's point person on Chinese interference.
We're going to be asking for Mr. Johnston to step aside as Special Rapporteur.
Based on my review...
In his report last week, former Governor General David Johnston advised against a public inquiry, but said he would preside over hearings. Then came the blowback.
Our friendship with Mr. Trudeau.
The Conservatives turned archived video of Johnston into an attack. Then election records revealed that Johnston's legal advisor, Sheila Block, donated more than $7,000 to the Liberals since 2006. Block didn't donate to any other party.
It is very clear that the appearance of bias is so high that it erodes the work that the Special Rapporteur can do.
Removing barriers to a public inquiry is now more urgent for the NDP. One of its members was also in the crosshairs of the Chinese government since at least the 2019 election.
I cannot comment specifically about how I'm being targeted. That is part of the classified information that's been provided to me by CSIS. So to that end, I obviously would not want to jeopardize the important work that they're embarking on.
As an actor.
Today, the Prime Minister turned his back on questions.
Merci tout le monde.
Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Singh wants the Special Rapporteur to step down.
I'll ask everyone to take a deep breath.
But it's not just the minority government that's being scrutinized. The opposition is questioning why the NDP continues to support the Liberals.
So my question is to the leader of the NDP. He has said that he wants a public inquiry. Well, now's the time for him to prove it.
The Conservatives and the Bloc are expected to support the NDP motion calling on the Special Rapporteur to step down, but it's non-binding. Even if the vote passes, it will send a message, but it won't topple the government. Judy Trin, CTV News, Ottawa.
In the Ukrainian capital today, there was no cover of darkness to hide the barrage of Russian airstrikes. This was the panic from a rare and brazen daytime attack from Moscow, with children among those seeking safety at a subway station. First responders are being credited with saving lives from an apartment building that partially collapsed in Iowa.
The frickin' building just collapsed.
8 people were rescued from the 6-story structure. Incredibly, no one was killed, but dozens of people are now without a home. The cause is still under investigation and the building is expected to be demolished tomorrow. Still ahead, body cameras on the soccer field, taking a shot at ending the abuse of referees. Ontario is blowing the whistle tonight on soccer parents and coaches who hurl abuse at those who officiate matches. CTV's Heather Wright on the new line of defense.
Behavior like this is driving soccer referees out of the game at an alarming rate. It's something Ontario Soccer is trying to solve with body cameras.
The fact that we have to put a camera on a referee doesn't bode very well as a statement to our society.
Johnny Misley is the CEO of Ontario Soccer and says a select number of officials in both youth and adult leagues across the province will soon wear devices similar to those worn by police in an effort to curb the growing problem of referee abuse.
We think we can turn this into a positive and attempt to try to change the culture.
He says the cameras will be used as both a deterrent and a way to collect evidence when and if things escalate.
Any tool that we can use to cut down on abuse is very important.
Matthew Bagazzoli is with the Toronto Soccer Referee Association. He says they've lost about 80% of their refs in the last decade, with verbal abuse the #1 reason for quitting.
We've seen consistent abuse over the years, sometimes physical, sometimes it is verbal. Obviously the physical situations are very rare, but they do happen.
Officials in England's grassroots leagues began wearing body cameras earlier this year, and already referees say they are feeling safer with the technology.
You need to act like a parent, okay?
This abuse is not confined to any one sport or country, and it's not always a case of parents behaving badly. A referee was shot and killed last fall inside a Toronto area sportsplex when he tried to de-escalate a scuffle between opposing players. Ontario Soccer will begin this pilot project on July 1st and spend the next several months collecting data. They hope to have a report on these findings this time next year. Heather Wright, CTV News, Vaughan, Ontario.
The man who coached the Toronto Raptors to an NBA championship has a new job. Nick Nurse has reportedly been hired as head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers. That's one of the teams the Raptors beat 4 years ago en route to the title. The former coach of the year was fired by the Raptors last month. After the break, standing strong. Nova Scotia's resilience in the face of raging wildfires.
We will get through this together. Do what you can to support your friends and neighbors. Do what you can to support those in need. That's what Nova Scotians do each and every time they're asked to step up. They do step up, and I have great faith in the Nova Scotian spirit, the Bluenose spirit, to get us through here.
Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston saying out loud what many Canadians are thinking tonight. The people in that province have been tested before, and here they are again. Let's bring in CTV Atlantic's chief anchor and, of course, a familiar face to our viewers as well, Todd Battis. Todd, the hope is that the winds cooperate, but still an anxious night ahead, especially for the people around you at the evacuation center. How are they coping?
Well, Omar, I think people are coping in Nova Scotia the way they often cope in difficult times. They're leaning on family, they're leaning on friends, and you know, tonight in this evacuation center, there are very, very few of the nearly 17,000 people who have been forced to flee their homes. Most people are simply staying with others they know, that neighborhood cooperation. They're also leaning on hope, I must say, that as you mentioned, the forecast will be right and that the winds will subside. You know, they're hoping in Halifax that, you know, perhaps theirs isn't one of the now 200 or more homes that are damaged or completely destroyed. They may not get back into their neighborhoods for a week. So it's going to be a lot of nervous time as well. They're hoping, of course, that the fires don't push into new neighborhoods. It's a time to be on edge here for certain, Omar.
Tense few days ahead, but the community standing strong. Todd, take care, my friend. Thank you so much. Well, shared experiences tend to bring people together, so in all the provinces and territories where fire is a threat tonight, we're thinking of you. Stay safe. That is a snapshot of this Monday for all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. Good night, and see you again tomorrow.